Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to add the button and ability to let a user stop following another user. Let's jump into the action. So here I am logged in as Brad and I'm viewing the profile for Barks-a-Lot. Now we've made this follow button come to life, but now it's a matter of, it doesn't make sense to continue showing this button if I've already followed Barks-a-Lot. So in this video, let's set up the logic that checks to see whether you should see this blue follow button or instead a red stop following button. So here's how I would make that happen. Let's jump into our user controller. So search for your user controller file. And we're looking for our public function that's named profile. So for me, it's around line 41. And when we render this blade template, let's just give it or pass it another property called, are you currently following, or show follow or remove, or some sort of true or false value that determines whether you should see the blue button or the red stop following button. So here's what I would do to make that happen. In the body of this function, let's say uppercase follow, : where. Let's right click on follow and choose import class. Cool. And then at the start of this line, let's actually save whatever this gives us into a variable. Let's name it currently following or not. True or false. Or let's actually just name it currently following, right? And then it would be true or false. And then let's do this. Let's actually set this to be false by default if you're not even logged in. And then let's only check to see if you have a matching follow in the database if you're logged in. So otherwise we don't even need to check and waste a database trip. So I would say if, for the if check, it would just be if auth, look inside that for the check function. Only if that's true, then we can actually query the database to see if, does the current logged in user already have a follow that matches the profile user. Cool. So before we build out this query, at the end of that, we could just call count. So then it's going to be either 0 or 1, true or false. So in here we would have an array, and it would actually be 2 subarrays. So the first one would be quotes user ID, comma, if that equals, comma, and then this would just be, call auth, call user, look inside that for ID. In the second array, we'd want to see if, quotes, followed user, comma, equals, comma, and then this would just be $user, look inside that for ID. Cool. So that's going to be, either 0 or 1. And then in our blade template, we can just evaluate that as true or false and show the appropriate button. So what I would do now is just pass this in to our blade template. So down here, when we're returning a view, we're giving it an array. Let's just give it another property. So like quotes, currently following equals greater than, and then it would just be our currently currently following value, comma. Cool. Let's save this, and now let's jump into our blade template. So its name is profilepost.blade.php. And around line 5, we see a form. I'm actually going to begin by using the directive of auth and then, end auth, because we only need to show this form either to add or remove a follow if you're logged in. So then I would just cut and paste the entire form bit of code to live inside the auth end auth. Cool. And now, before the form tag, here's what I'm going to do. Let's have a directive of if, and for the check, I would say if, $currently following, and at the beginning of that, we can say exclamation. So in other words, I'm trying to check for the condition of if we should show them the create follow button. So in other words, if you're not already following this user, and then let's say, and if it's not yourself, because we don't want to show the create button if it's your own profile. So if you're not already following them, and then, call the auth function, look inside that, call the user function, look inside that for ID, right? And then it's if that does not equal $username. Cool. Let's end that if. In just a moment, we can fill in what should go in between those two lines. But then let's set another directive for if, and this condition would be if $currently following if that does evaluate to true, that means you're already following them. So we would want to show a totally different form with a red stop following button. So, @ end if. Now here's what I would do. Take this form tag, the entirety of the form HTML, copy that into your clipboard and delete it. And now in this first if area, in between the if and end if, you can paste it in. Cool. But then in the second one, we can paste it in again, only now let's change this to be removing a follow. So for the form action, it would be, instead of create follow, it would be remove dash follow. And then inside the form, we can get rid of the button that we currently have. And you'll see that there's a commented out HTML button. Just remove the comment, so that button comes to life. Remove the comment at the end of it as well. Cool. And then we don't need the commented version of the button at all up in our top copy. So you could remove that entirely. And now I'm also realizing that we didn't mean to duplicate the if check to show you your manage avatar button. So what you could do is in our first copy, you could just remove that if, this check to see if it should show you if you have your manage avatar. You could get rid of that entirely, those 3 lines. And then in our second copy, I would just take the if, these 3 lines through the end if, cut that into your clipboard. And then after the end if, but before the end auth, you could just paste in your clipboard. Cool. So as long as you're logged in, you should see manage avatar, but then, depending on whether you should see the remove or add button, that is all conditional. I realize that was messy. This really has nothing to do with Laravel. This is just, the messiness of setting up a user interface, but you can always download the zip for this lesson to receive this code. But I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's see what we get. So if I refresh, perfect, I see stop following. If I visit that same URL in a window where I'm not logged in at all, beautiful, you don't see a follow or stop following. But if I log in with my third account of Meowsalot, cool, so Meowsalot doesn't already follow Barksalot. You see the follow icon. Now, let's get back on task here. Let's set up the stop following button so that it actually removes a follow. So to do that, we would just go into our follow controller. And remember, down here, we set up the remove follow function, but we didn't actually spell it out. So in the parentheses, it would just, use type hinting. So user, and then lowercase $user. In the body of the function, I would just say, use the follow class, use its static method of where. We're going to query for something, but then after that, we can tack on and use the delete method. So what are we trying to find to delete? Well, we're going to query, so an array, and we're going to give it 2 sub-arrays. So the first one is where the user ID, comma, equals, comma, and then it would just be whoever's logged in the current session. So call auth, look inside that, call user, look inside that for the ID. Cool. And then where also the followed user matches the user that's being requested. So this would be followed user, comma, quotes equals, comma, and then just lowercase $user ID. And then after that line, we can just show a flash message. So let's say back and call with for a flash message. And we can say success, comma, user successfully unfollowed. Let's give this a save and test it out. So here I'm logged in with Brad. If I refresh and click stop following, and you can see I didn't return anything, so the screen's blank. So I made a mistake here. You're supposed to return back. You always want to return something to end your request response lifecycle. So return back. If I save that, now if I go back and refresh, you can see that action went through, but we just didn't send a response. But the idea is now I can click follow to add the follow. I can click stop following to delete the follow. Perfect, right? And if you look at your database, if you look in the follows table, there's just the one follow remaining where Barksalot is following Brad. So if I go into this window where I'm Barksalot and I view the Brad profile and refresh, cool. Stop following. If I click that, and we go back and refresh our database, now there are 0 follows. This is awesome, right? So now we've truly added that start and stop following functionality. Just so we have a little bit of data to work with in our next lesson, I'm going to go ahead and have the Brad user follow Barks-a-lot and have the Barks-a-lot user follow the Brad user. And then finally, in this window, I'm logged in with Meows-a-lot, and I'll have Meows-a-lot follow both Brad and Barks-a-lot. So /profile, follow Brad, and if I go to the Barks-a-lot profile, follow that user as well. Cool. So if I look in my database, in the follows table, cool. So Brad follows Barks-a-lot, Barks-a-lot follows Brad, and then Meows-a-lot follows both of them. Beautiful. Now, in our next lesson, we're actually going to build out this interface, right? So that these counts for followers and following these values, the count values are actually dynamic, and also so that when you click on them, it would actually show you a relevant list of, all the users that you would expect to see. Really quick at the end here, and you might have caught this during the video and you might have been yelling at the screen, but I definitely made a mistake, a typo. So I'm viewing my own profile right now. I should not see this follow button. And the typo is an easy fix. So if you just go into your profile post.blade.php file, around line 6, remember we had this if condition and I said, and, if it's not yourself. Well, for this comparison, when we call user, we're not looking for ID. This would be, the username column if that does not match the current profile username. So make that change. If I save, refresh, beautiful. Now you don't see the follow button when you're viewing your own profile. Cool. Let's keep our momentum rolling, and I will see you in the next video.